In life, we all face moments where we have to decide whether to let someone slide for their actions or hold them accountable. The truth is, when we allow people to mistreat us or others without facing any consequences, we're not just doing them a disservice, we're doing ourselves one too. Holding people accountable for their actions is one of the most important ways to protect our peace, maintain our dignity, and teach others how to treat us. Too often, we turn a blind eye to disrespect, harmful behavior, and betrayal, thinking that forgiveness is the only solution. But there's a point where we must stop accepting poor behavior and start showing that actions have consequences. When people treat others poorly without facing any repercussions, it not only damages relationships, but it also allows these harmful actions to continue and even escalate. Allowing someone to repeatedly mistreat you without any consequence teaches them that they can get away with it, and it encourages them to keep doing it. Over time, this creates a toxic environment where trust is broken, self-esteem is shattered, and emotional scars can form. The longer we tolerate bad behavior without consequences, the more damage it causes to everyone involved. In this video, we'll dive into the 5 key reasons why some people truly deserve to face the consequences of their actions, and why showing no mercy when appropriate is the right choice. We'll explore how holding people accountable can not only protect your well-being, but also give others the chance to grow and learn from their mistakes. Each of these reasons builds upon the other, and by the end of this video, you'll have a deeper understanding of why it's crucial to enforce boundaries and stand firm in your self-respect. So stick with us until the end, and let's uncover how showing no mercy can lead to a stronger, healthier you. Society often puts a lot of pressure on us to forgive and forget, encouraging us to let go of the hurt and move on quickly. We hear it from well-meaning friends, family, and even social media. Be the bigger person, let it go, or forgiveness is key to peace. While forgiveness is certainly a valuable quality, there's a massive difference between forgiving someone and letting them off the hook without any consequences. In fact, when we forgive without holding people accountable, we can end up enabling their harmful behavior and making it worse in the long run. Think about it for a moment. What message does it send when someone hurts you? You forgive them, and they face no real consequences for their actions. It says, hey, it's okay to treat people this way because they'll just let it slide. Over time, this message can have serious consequences, not just for you, but for the person doing the hurting as well. Without facing the natural results of their actions, they have no reason to change, and the harmful behavior can keep happening, sometimes escalating as they push boundaries further. This is how cycles of mistreatment begin, and why it's so important to break them by enforcing healthy boundaries and holding people accountable. Let me give you an example of how this plays out in real life. I had a friend who always forgave her roommate for borrowing her clothes without asking. It started with just a few items here and there, things that were easy to overlook. But after some time, it escalated. The borrowing turned into taking. Then, her clothes started getting damaged. One day, my friend found a dress that was completely ruined. The final straw came when she realized that entire pieces of her wardrobe were just disappearing. Every time she confronted her roommate, there was a tearful apology, followed by promises that it wouldn't happen again. But each time, the behavior repeated itself. It wasn't until she finally put a lock on her door that things changed. The consequences were clear, and her roommate couldn't talk her way out of it anymore. By forgiving without setting real Boundaries, my friend, had unintentionally allowed the behavior to spiral out of control. This story shows how continuing to forgive without enforcing boundaries can lead to more harm in the long run. It's not really about forgiveness at all. It's about enabling someone's behavior. But here's the key difference. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to tolerate the same disrespectful or harmful actions. Genuine forgiveness is about releasing your own anger and hurt so you can move on and heal. But it doesn't mean you have to let the same person keep mistreating you without consequences. True redemption is earned. It's not just about saying sorry. It's about showing through actions that you understand the harm you've caused and are committed to changing. When someone genuinely wants to make things right, they will accept the consequences of their actions and work to rebuild the trust they've damaged. Without consequences, there's no real opportunity for growth or improvement, and the cycle of mistreatment continues. This is where accountability comes in. When we hold people accountable for their actions, it gives them the chance to learn from their mistakes and grow. Imagine a child touching a hot stove. If they don't feel the pain, they'll keep touching it, unaware of the danger. Accountability works in a similar way. By allowing people to face the natural consequences of their actions, we're showing them the reality of their choices and helping them to understand that there are boundaries in relationships, and crossing them has an impact. Without consequences, there's no real incentive for anyone to change. The problem with forgiving without enforcing boundaries is that it often prevents this vital growth from happening. When we don't allow others to face the consequences of their actions, we rob them of the opportunity to learn and change. Instead, we protect them from reality, and that doesn't help anyone in the long run. So how do you avoid falling into the trap of forgiving without boundaries? Here's a quick tip. You can forgive someone, but that doesn't mean you have to tolerate the same behavior. Setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you someone who values themselves and their peace of mind. If someone continues to disrespect you or hurt you, it's okay to say, "I can forgive you, but this behavior is no longer acceptable, and there will be consequences if it continues." Setting clear, healthy boundaries is an act of self-respect, and it's the first step in breaking the cycle of enabling harmful behavior. Remember, forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to let them walk all over you. You can choose to let go of the anger, but that doesn't mean you allow the same disrespectful actions to continue. Disrespect rarely starts out in grand, overt ways. Instead, it often begins with small, seemingly insignificant actions. It might be something like someone canceling plans at the last minute, or making a snide, critical remark under the guise of a joke. At first, these actions may seem trivial, and we often brush them off as just bad days or misunderstandings. However, these small acts of disrespect can build up over time, growing into something much more harmful. It's not always obvious at first, but over time, they form a subtle pattern of behavior that escalates, and before you know it, you're dealing with ongoing mistreatment that's much harder to ignore. The tricky part about disrespect is that it tends to follow a cycle. This pattern can be so ingrained that you might not even realize it's happening until it's too late. It often starts with a boundary violation, like someone saying or doing something that crosses the line of what you're comfortable with. When you call them out on it, they might minimize their behavior, saying something like, "Oh, I was just joking," or "I didn't mean it like that." For a while, they may make an effort to improve. Maybe they apologize or they try to behave better for a short time, but eventually the cycle repeats itself, and they return to their old ways. You might find yourself caught in this loop, giving them the benefit of the doubt each time, hoping they'll change. Unfortunately, without any real consequences, this cycle often continues indefinitely, and the disrespect just grows. This cycle doesn't only show up in romantic relationships, it can happen in any type of relationship. In friendships, for instance, you might have a friend who constantly cancels plans without a valid reason, or makes you feel bad about yourself with little comments that chip away at your self-esteem. When you call them out, they may promise to do better, but the same behavior repeats itself, and soon enough you start to feel like you're the one doing all the emotional labor in the friendship. In a work environment, you might have a colleague who repeatedly takes credit for your ideas or constantly undermines you in meetings. Initially, they might apologize or claim they didn't mean to offend you, but before long, they're at it again. In families, the disrespect can manifest as overstepping boundaries or belittling your opinions. In romantic relationships, it might look like broken promises or a lack of consideration for your feelings. No matter the relationship, these subtle patterns of disrespect follow the same cycle, and it's important to recognize it early on. The real danger comes when we start excusing or dismissing these patterns. We might think they didn't really mean it, or they're just having a bad day. These excuses can make us overlook the repeated behavior and convince ourselves that things will change. But in doing so, we're only allowing the disrespect to continue. Often, our emotions and hopes for the relationship cloud our judgment, causing us to overlook the obvious signs. We hold on to the hope that the other person will change if we just give them enough chances. But this rarely works out. The more we excuse their behavior, the more we're enabling them to continue disrespecting us, and the harder it becomes to set the necessary boundaries that would stop the cycle. One of the most important things you can do when recognizing these patterns is to trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, if you feel disrespected or hurt by someone's actions, listen to that feeling. Often our gut reactions are accurate indicators that something deeper is going on. Maybe you're feeling uneasy when they break promises or brush off your feelings, and that discomfort is your body's way of signaling that this is a pattern, not just a one-time incident. Don't dismiss these feelings as just overreacting. Your intuition can be an incredibly powerful tool for recognizing when someone is mistreating you. A simple but effective strategy to help you identify these patterns is to keep a journal. By writing down instances where someone disrespects you, whether big or small, you create a clear record of their behavior. Over time, you'll start to notice patterns emerge, making it easier to see if you're dealing with a cycle of disrespect. It's easy to forget or rationalize incidents in the moment, but writing them down helps you step back and look at the bigger picture. Once you have a record, you can evaluate the situation more clearly and determine whether this person is truly respecting your boundaries or simply taking advantage of your tolerance. Recognizing patterns of disrespect early on is key to preventing further harm. The longer you allow someone to mistreat you, the harder it becomes to break the cycle. Trust your instincts, set your boundaries, and don't make excuses for behavior that isn't acceptable. By doing so, you'll be protecting yourself and setting a clear example of what you will and won't tolerate, which is essential for maintaining healthy, respectful relationships. Boundaries are crucial when it comes to protecting our self-worth. They act as a line of defense, ensuring that we are treated with the respect we deserve. In essence, boundaries are the limits we set for how we expect to be treated by others. They can be physical, emotional, or mental limits, but all serve the same purpose: protecting our dignity, and ensuring that we don't let others take advantage of us. When we allow people to consistently cross these boundaries, whether by making hurtful comments, being disrespectful of our time, or overstepping in personal ways, it sends a dangerous message that our dignity is less important than avoiding conflict or keeping the peace. In these situations, we begin to minimize our own needs in favor of others, which can slowly chip away at our self-respect. The impact of ignoring boundaries is often more psychological than we realize. Over time, when we don't enforce the limits that we've set for ourselves, our self-esteem starts to suffer. We may begin to feel like we don't deserve to be treated better, and this can lead to a dangerous cycle of self-doubt. If we allow disrespect to happen repeatedly without doing anything about it, we may start internalizing these actions, believing that they are a reflection of our worth. In the long run, failing to protect our boundaries can cause us to lose sight of who we are and what we deserve. This gradual erosion of self-esteem can affect all areas of our lives, our relationships, our work, and even how we see ourselves in the world. On the flip side, when we set clear and firm boundaries, it allows us to cultivate healthier, more respectful relationships. Setting boundaries isn't about pushing people away or being harsh. Rather, it's a sign of self-respect. It shows that we value ourselves enough to expect the same treatment from others. While it might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if we've been used to tolerating poor behavior, establishing non-negotiable boundaries is empowering. It helps us communicate our needs clearly and confidently, ensuring that our self-worth is recognized. People who respect us will honor our boundaries, and those who don't may not have a place in our lives. Not enforcing boundaries, however, comes with its own set of consequences. When we neglect our boundaries, we invite more pain into our lives. This can lead to a gradual loss of power in relationships, as others begin to take advantage of our tolerance. The more we let people cross our boundaries without consequences, the less likely they are to change their behavior. In fact, they may become more entitled to our time, energy, and respect, while we lose more of ourselves in the process. Over time, this dynamic can be draining, leaving us feeling resentful, frustrated, and powerless. To prevent this from happening, it's essential to assert our boundaries clearly and confidently. One way to do this is by using the "I feel" technique when communicating our boundaries. This approach helps us express our feelings without sounding accusatory, making it easier for the other person to understand and respect our limits. For example, instead of saying, "You always ignore my boundaries," we might say, "I feel disrespected when my boundaries are ignored." This phrasing focuses on our emotions and keeps the conversation centered on how we are affected, rather than on blaming or criticizing the other person. It's a gentle yet firm way to assert our needs and protect our self-worth. By setting clear boundaries and enforcing them with confidence, we empower ourselves to build stronger, healthier relationships. We demonstrate that we respect ourselves enough to demand the same respect from others. Boundaries are not just about keeping people at a distance. They're about making sure that we never lose sight of our own value. When we respect our boundaries, we create space for others to do the same. And in turn, we foster relationships that are built on mutual respect and understanding. So, remember, setting boundaries is not selfish. It's a necessary act of self-care that protects your self-worth and ensures that you are always treated with the respect you deserve. Enablement is a term that many people don't fully understand, but it plays a huge role in unhealthy relationships. In simple terms, enabling happens when someone supports or allows another person to continue harmful or negative behavior, often without realizing the damage they're causing. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that by constantly forgiving someone, or by letting them off the hook without consequences, you're being kind or compassionate. But in reality, this can contribute to their suffering and yours, because it never gives them the chance to truly face the natural consequences of their actions. When you repeatedly enable someone's behavior, you're essentially telling them that it's okay to keep treating you poorly or making irresponsible choices. This creates a cycle where both people are trapped in an unhealthy pattern, one where growth and accountability are impossible. A common example of enablement is when someone repeatedly borrows money from a friend or family member and never repays it. The lender may feel sorry for the borrower and continue lending money, hoping that things will improve. But in doing so, they're enabling the borrower to avoid the consequences of not managing their finances responsibly. Instead of facing the discomfort of needing to learn how to budget or deal with the financial strain, the borrower is allowed to continue their behavior without any real accountability. This creates a toxic cycle where the person who is enabling may feel taken advantage of, while the one being enabled never has the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. The truth is, consequences are not a form of punishment. They are an opportunity for growth. When we allow someone to face the consequences of their actions, we give them a chance to learn, adjust, and ultimately become a better person. For instance, when someone fails to follow through on a promise or mistreats you in some way, the natural consequence of that behavior might be that they lose your trust or support. While this may feel uncomfortable, especially if you care about the person, it is often necessary for their personal growth. Love doesn't mean always shielding someone from the consequences of their actions. In fact, true love sometimes means letting them experience the natural fallout of their behavior. It can be tough, but it's essential for both parties to understand that actions have repercussions. That being said, breaking the cycle of enablement can come with a lot of guilt. When we start enforcing boundaries and holding others accountable, it's normal to feel bad. We worry that we're being too harsh, or that we might hurt the other person's feelings. This guilt can be especially strong if the person is someone we love, and we want to protect them from pain. But it's important to remember that by enabling harmful behavior, we're not helping anyone. Letting someone face the consequences of their actions is a form of love. It's a way of showing them that their actions matter, and that they need to take responsibility for their choices. It's not about punishing them. It's about helping them grow, even if it's hard to watch. One way to start breaking the cycle of enablement is by setting firm boundaries with a non-emotional stance. This might mean calmly explaining that you can no longer tolerate a certain behavior without getting upset or trying to manipulate the other person into understanding. It's not about yelling or expressing anger. It's about standing your ground and allowing the natural consequences to unfold. For example, if someone consistently borrows money and doesn't repay it, you might say, "I can no longer lend you money because it hasn't been repaid in the past. I hope you understand." This is a simple, clear boundary that doesn't come with guilt or emotion attached. It's a way of acknowledging the situation without feeling responsible for fixing it or absorbing the consequences. By taking this approach, you're not only protecting yourself, but you're also giving the other person the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've been enabling the behavior for a long time. but it's an essential step in breaking the unhealthy cycle. Trust that by letting someone experience the natural consequences of their actions, you're actually offering them a chance to grow into a better, more responsible person. In the end, breaking the cycle of enablement is a powerful way to promote change, not just for yourself, but for everyone involved. Constantly worrying about someone else's behavior, adjusting your actions just to avoid conflict, and bending over backward to keep the peace can drain your energy faster than you realize. It takes an emotional toll, leaving you feeling exhausted, anxious, and out of control. The more you tolerate disrespect or mistreatment, the more you give up your own power. Every time you let someone cross your boundaries or let harmful behaviors slide, you're essentially shrinking yourself, allowing the other person to take up space in your life that doesn't belong to them. You become so focused on managing their emotions or avoiding confrontation that you forget about your own needs and well-being. This constant cycle leaves you with little emotional energy to focus on what really matters to you, and it robs you of the peace you deserve. Reclaiming your power starts with setting clear boundaries. Boundaries are not about being harsh or selfish. They are a way to protect your emotional health and ensure you are treated with the respect you deserve. When you stand firm in your boundaries, you take back control over your life. You stop letting others dictate how you feel and what you accept. The act of enforcing these boundaries may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent a long time tolerating disrespect or overlooking harmful behavior. But the moment you begin to stand up for yourself, you will feel an incredible sense of emotional liberation. You will no longer feel weighed down by the need to please others or adjust your behavior to avoid conflict. Instead, you'll experience the freedom that comes from knowing that your peace and well-being are in your own hands. Enforcing consequences, while it may feel tough initially, leads to emotional freedom and clarity. When you let go of the need to tolerate mistreatment, you create space for peace to return to your life. For example, if a friend consistently cancels plans without explanation, and you finally decide to stop accommodating them or stop making excuses for their behavior, you may initially feel uncomfortable or guilty. But over time, you will realize how much lighter you feel. No more emotional exhaustion from constantly managing the disappointment or feeling hurt by their actions. Instead, you gain clarity about what you need in relationships, and you free yourself from the emotional weight of tolerating behavior that doesn't serve you. By enforcing consequences, you give yourself the space to focus on the things and people that truly matter, and you restore peace to your life. Self-respect plays a vital role in all of this. How you allow others to treat you sets the tone for your relationships. When you tolerate behavior that disrespects you or crosses your boundaries, you're teaching others that it's acceptable. But when you stop allowing that treatment and start enforcing your boundaries, you show people what you expect from them. You teach them how to treat you by what you tolerate, what you stop, and what you reinforce. By protecting your peace and standing up for yourself, you not only regain your power, but also teach others to respect you in return. The message you send is clear. Your peace is non-negotiable, and you won't settle for anything less than the respect you deserve. In the war, and your peace is worth protecting above all else. It's easy to think that making others happy or keeping the peace is the most important thing. But when you do that at the expense of your own well-being, you end up sacrificing your own happiness. Boundaries are the tool you need to protect your peace and reclaim your power. They are not walls that keep people out. They are the clear lines that define what is acceptable and what isn't. When you start enforcing boundaries and holding others accountable for their actions, you give yourself the gift of emotional freedom. You stop living in a state of constant worry and start living in alignment with your values and needs. One practical way to begin this process is by practicing the power of no. Saying no can feel difficult at first, especially if you're used to saying yes to everything to avoid disappointing others. But learning to say no is one of the most powerful ways to protect your peace. When you say no to things that don't align with your values, you are prioritizing yourself and your well-being. This simple act sends a clear message to others that you value your time, energy, and peace. Over time, you'll find that saying no becomes easier, and you'll experience more clarity and peace in your life. To quickly recap, we've explored 5 key reasons why it's crucial for people to face the consequences of their actions. First, unlimited forgiveness can enable harmful behavior, making it harder for anyone to learn and grow. Second, recognizing patterns of disrespect allows us to see when behaviors are repeating and escalating, which we can no longer ignore. Third, protecting your self-worth through boundaries is essential, because when we don't stand firm, we risk losing our sense of dignity. Fourth, breaking the cycle of enablement allows us to stop enabling others' toxic behaviors, giving them the chance to face their actions and grow. Finally, reclaiming your power and peace comes when you stop tolerating mistreatment and take charge of your own emotional well-being. Standing up for yourself is not just about setting boundaries. It's about reclaiming your dignity, peace, and emotional freedom. It's about taking back control over your life and ensuring that you're treated with the respect you deserve. When you begin to enforce boundaries and hold others accountable, you're not only protecting yourself, but you're also teaching others how to treat you. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. Start today. Taking action now will give you the peace and respect you deserve, and your future self will thank you for it. Don't wait for others to change. Take the first step and make sure you're creating the life you want to live.